Hi, welcome back everyone. As you already know, I really like playing off meta and lazy playstyle builds, and this build is not going to be an exception. My previous builds were pretty expensive, so this time I decided to try to create cheap and fast Autobomber. Also, I'm going to show a perfect farming strategy for this build. But before that, if by the end of the video you will think that I did a great job, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. The key item for this build is Hidden Blade Unique. This item grants us Unseen Strike skill, which will fire blades while we are phasing. There are multiple ways of getting phasing for this build: flasks, watchers, or phasing gem. I chose the latter for additional movement speed, but since this is a lazy build, I'm going to use it in combination with automation gem. Now we have phasing sorted out, it's time to talk about the damage. By itself, the Unseen Strike is pretty weak, so that is why first obvious choice would be using Squire. This way we can get up to 6 supports for the skill. Okay, but even with 6 links, the damage is nowhere near enough even for the maps. So I decided to use another cool unique like Poacher. I have another build on my channel based around this unique. If you're interested, you should definitely check it out. This unique helmet will give us spirit charges based on the amount of Abyss Jewels we have. And the best part about those charges is that the helmet will give us 5% of physical damage as extra damage of each element. So now the idea is pretty straightforward. Stack as many jewels as possible. That is why we are going to use a combination of Shroud of the Lightness unique body armor and Bubonic Trail boots. And this is pretty much the entire build. Now let's quickly go around all the gear. For the weapon, obviously Hidden Blade unique, Light Poacher helmet and the Squire, Shroud of the Lightness body armor and Bubonic Trail boots. For the amulet, I'm using rare amulet with crit multi, crit chance, physical damage, all elemental resistance and some maximum life. For the rings, I'm using Death Rush for additional movement speed from Adrenaline, and the Taming. This combination of the rings is pretty much best in slot. One gives us a lot of speed and the other a lot of damage. For the gloves, I'm using rare gloves with increased damage against shield enemies, some accuracy rating, some needed strength, life, and a little bit physical damage. For the Implicence, I'm using gain 1 rage attack on hit and convert physical damage to cold damage. And also have crafted prefix for converting physical damage to fire damage. I'm doing this so we can get reliably 50 stacks of Trinity. For the belt, I'm using the Tides of Time belt. You can swap it for any other rare belt. This is a free slot, so you can change anything you want. If you have higher budget, you can use Headhunter instead. For the flasks, I'm using Explosive Flask and some utility flasks for movement speed, critical strike chance and reduced effect of shock. Now let's talk about the tree. This tree focuses on getting as much jewel sockets as possible. For the unique jewels, I'm using Storm Shroud, Lithopride with a couple of double damage nodes, Transcendent Flash to get a lot of crit multi, and Watcher's Eye. I got this Watcher's Eye pretty cheaply, but you probably won't be able to. Probably the only modifier that I'm looking for is +2 critical strike chance while affected by hatred. Everything other than that is just extra. You can try to get +2 crit multi while affected by anger, or phasing while affected by haste. You can choose anything that you can find. For the clusters, I'm using 2 large clusters with Fan of the Blaze passives. This is really the only useful one. Other than that, you can try to get any other useful passive. And the rest are Abyss Jewels with as much flat damage as you can possibly get. You should prioritize getting a lot of physical damage, crit multi, some life, and other flat types of damage. All of the Abyss Jewels are pretty much the same. Now let's get over the gems. For the damaging links, I'm using Awakening Elite Damage, Increased Critical Damage, Nightblade, Hypothermia, Awakening Vicious Projectiles, and Trinity. For the utility gems, I'm using Sniper's Mark with Mark on Hit, Phase Run Link with Automation and more duration. For the auras, I'm using Precision. Depending on your mana level, you may want to reduce the Precision level. And for the main auras, I'm using Herald of Ash, Anger, and Hatred. Depending on your Watcher's Eyes, you can swap Anger for something else. And that's basically it. When fully buffed, this build has around 9 million damage, practically not existing survivability, and really high movement speed. While you may think that this level of survivability is not acceptable, I totally agree with you, but with this level of movement speed and lazy playstyle, you rarely die while mapping. Overall, I spent less than 20 divines on this build, and I think that this is one of the best, cheapest Autobomber out there. Usually Autobombers cannot do any bosses, but with this build it's possible. It's pretty funky, but if you need to do so, you can manage. First, you need to respect some passives and swap them to Life Flask charges. Swap Headhunter for the Tides of Time, and swap Explosive Flask and Silver Flask for 2 Breathing Jars. And this is it. Now you can spam those worms and sustain your spirit charges while running around. Also, there is one little trick for better quality of life. You can buy any shield with +2 to minimum frenzy charges and swap to it before the fight. This will allow us to have longer phase run initially. Now let's talk about the farming strategy. This build has a really high movement speed, so I won't farm something that won't slow us down. And as you already probably saw in the first part of the video, we are going to focus on Alva and boss rushing. Those farming strategies are pretty well known, so I'm just gonna briefly show my Atlas tree and scarabs. In my Atlas tree I have 100% chance for the map to contain Alva. I'm getting all of the Alva nodes, all of the map nodes, and boss reward nodes. Also, I'm running Maven invitation maps, so that is why I'm getting destructive play as well. And that's pretty much it. You have a lot of passives left over, so I'm getting shrined nodes, some scarab nodes. The tree is pretty flexible. For the scarabs, I'm only using the Scarab of Conversion for additional chance to drop Shaper and Guardian map. This scarab is pretty cheap. You can use it or not, it's up to you. And for the big money maker, I'm using Scarab of Timeliness when I have good tempo setup. You can find more information about this scarab in YouTube. And this is pretty much it. While recording this video, I ran around 20 maps I believe, and those are the results. I got a lot of Conquer maps, some Elder maps, Shaper maps, Synth maps, couple of T17s, and the biggest part of the profit comes from the tempos. So overall, this is cheap farming strategy. The only expensive part is this scarab. At this point of the league, the economy is pretty hard. I bought most of those scarabs from the market, so the supply is pretty low. But even if you're buying this scarab for 100C, it's still worth it. Because on average you will get your tempo in 1 and 3, and you are getting 2 divines from the Locus of Corruption, so even the scarab costs 100C, it's still 50C profit. Well, this is it guys. I was really surprised how the build turned out. I didn't expect it to feel this good with this little investment. If you wanted to try some lazy playstyle build, I would definitely recommend it. In the next video, I'm going to invest a lot of currency in this character to see what it can do with a higher budget. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!